students. Today we'll be doing a new story called A Question of Trust, written by Victor Canning. This story is about a man named Horace Danby, who is 50 years old, and everyone around him thinks he's a good and an honest man. He used to build locks and used to earn enough profit so that he could hire 2 servants to help him. He was sent to jail once, about 15 years ago, because he used to commit robberies every year. This year, when he goes to a house for robbery, he meets a woman who pretends to be the owner of the house. And later, when he leaves from there and is arrested after 2-3 days, he comes to know the truth of that lady. So let's begin with the story. Everyone thought that Horace Danby was a good, honest citizen. He was about 50 years old and unmarried, and he lived with a housekeeper who worried over his health. In fact, he was usually very well and happy except for attacks of hay fever in summer. He made locks and was successful enough at his business to have 2 helpers. Yes, Horace Danby was good and respectable, but not completely honest. 15 years ago, Horace had served his first and only sentence in a prison. Library. He loved rare, expensive books, so he robbed a safe every year. Every year he planned carefully just what he would do, stole enough to last for 12 months, and secretly bought the books he loved through an agent. Now, walking in the bright July sunshine, he felt sure that this year's robbery was going to be as successful as all the others. For 2 weeks he had been studying the house at Shotover Grange, looking at its room, its electric wiring, its paths, and its garden. This afternoon, the 2 servants who remained in the Grange while the family was in London had gone to the movies. Horace saw them go, and he felt happy in spite of a little tickle of hay fever in his nose. He came out from behind the garden wall, his tools carefully packed in a bag on his back. Okay, so this what is a hay fever? Please underline the word hay fever. It's an allergy caused by pollen or dust in which the mucous membranes of the eyes and nose are inflamed, causing running of the nose and watery eyes. Safe means a strong fireproof cabinet with a complex lock used for the storage of valuables, and Grange is a country house with farm buildings attached. So here Horace, who was a 50 years old man, he was unmarried and lived with his housekeeper. The housekeeper used to worry about his health, although he was fit and fine, but used to have hay fevers attacks in summer. He used to make locks and used to earn a profit that was enough for him to hire 2 helpers for his work. Everybody used to think that he was a good citizen. Everybody thought that he was an honest citizen, but nobody knew that he had gone to jail about 15 years ago and served a sentence in the prison library. He got his love for rare, expensive books and from there. And every year he used to steal money that would last him for a year, and with the rest of the money, he used to buy books through a secret agent. This year, during the summers of July, he was sure that he would steal as easily without getting caught as he used to do every other summer. So he studied the house for over 2 weeks, studying the smallest minute details such as electric wiring, paths, and garden area, etc. And that specific day, the servants who were supposed to stay back on the days when the family went to London went out for a movie. Horace saw them leaving and was happy instead of being worried about the tickle in his nose due to hay fever. He then left with the bag that had his tools. Okay. There were about £15,000 worth of jewels in the Grange safe. If he sold them one by one, he expected to get at least 5,000, enough to make him happy for another year. There were 3 very interesting books coming up for sale in the autumn. Now he would get the money he wanted to buy them. He had seen the housekeeper hang the key to the kitchen door on a hook outside. He put on a pair of gloves, took the key, and opened the door. He was always careful not to leave any fingerprints. A small dog was lying in the kitchen. It stirred, made a noise, and moved its tail in a friendly way. "All right, Sherry," Horace said as he passed. All you had to do to keep dogs quiet was to call them by their right names and show them love. The safe was in the drawing room behind a rather poor painting. Horace wondered for a moment whether he should collect pictures instead of books, but they took up too much room. In a small house, books were better. There was a great bowl of flowers on the table, and Horace felt his nose tickle. He gave a little sneeze and then put down his bag. He carefully arranged his tools. He had 4 hours before the servants returned. The safe was not going to be hard to open. After all, he had lived with locks and safes all his life. The burglar alarm was poorly built. He went into the hall to cut its wire. He came back and sneezed loudly as the smell of the flowers came to him again. How foolish people are when they own valuable things, Horace thought. A magazine article had described this house, giving a plan of all the rooms and a picture of this room. The writer had even mentioned that the painting hid a safe. But Horace found that the flowers were hindering him in his work. He buried his face in his handkerchief. Underline the word stirred, which means move or cause to move slightly. Tickle means in a way that causes mild discomfort or itching and often laughter. Burglar means a person who commits theft. Hindering means make it difficult for someone to do something or for something to happen. So in this paragraph, according to Horace, there were about £15,000 worth of jewels in the Greenwich safes. And he thought that even if he sold them one by one, he would get at least £5,000 that would keep him happy and content for 1 year. So he also thought about the 3 books that were coming up in the autumn and thought that now he would have the money needed to buy those books. He saw the housekeeper of the Greenwich hang the keys on the hook outside the kitchen door. He took the key with the glove on his hands so as not to leave any kind of fingerprints. He opened the door of the Greenwich and used to be very careful about the fingerprints. He then saw a small dog sleeping in the kitchen. The dog moved a bit, made a noise, and then moved his tail in a friendly way. And he knew that the trick to keep dogs quiet was to call them by their names and show them a bit of love. The safe of the Greenwich was in the drawing room, hidden behind a painting. And looking at the painting, he thought that he should collect paintings rather than books, but then he thought that it would be better to collect books in a small house because pictures required larger spaces. Then, as he moved forward, he saw a bowl of flowers on the table. His nose was tickling due to the hay fever and the smell of the flowers. He arranged his tools and saw that he had about 4 hours until the housekeeper's return. The safe would not have been difficult to open, as he had lived with safes and locks all his life, and the burglar system of the house was not a good one. He went into the hall to cut the wires of the burglar system. He again sneezed loudly as the smell of the flowers came to him again. He was thinking to himself that how foolish rich people were when they had valuable things, as he recalled that the whole plan of the house, including the information about the safe, was given in the magazine. He saw that the smell of the flowers was constantly making him sneeze loudly, so he put a handkerchief on his face and continued to work. Then he heard a voice say from the doorway, "What is it? A cold or hay fever?" Before he could think, Horace said, "Hay fever," and found himself sneezing again. The voice went on, "You can cure it with a special treatment, you know, if you find out just what plant gives you the disease. I think you'd better see a doctor if you're serious about your work. I heard you from the top of the house just now, and it was quite a kindly voice, but one with firmness in it. A woman was standing in the doorway, and Sherry was rubbing against her. She was young, quite pretty, and was dressed in red. She walked to the fireplace and straightened the ornaments there. "Down, Sherry," she said. "Anyone would think that been away for a month." And she smiled at Horace and went on. "However, I came back just in time, though I didn't expect to meet a burglar." Horace had some hope because she seemed to be amused at meeting him. He might avoid trouble if he treated her the right way. He replied, "Didn't like expect to be meet one of the family." She nodded. "Of course, you see what an inconvenience it is for you to meet me." "What are you going to do?" asked Horace said. "And my first thought was to run. Of course, you could do that, but I would telephone the police and tell them all about you. They'd get you at once." Then it says, Horace said, "I would, of course, cut the telephone wires first." And then he hesitated, a smile on his face. "I would make sure that you could do nothing for some time. A few hours would be enough." She looked at him seriously. "You wouldn't hurt me." Horace paused and then said, "I think I was trying to frighten you when I said that." "You didn't frighten me," Horace suggested. "It would be nice if you would forget you ever saw me. Let me go." The voice was suddenly sharp. "Why should I? You are going to rob me. If I let you go, you'll only rob someone else. Society must be protected from men like you." Horace smiled. "I'm not a man who threatens society. I steal only from those who have a lot of money. I steal for a very good reason, and I hate the thought of prison." She laughed, and he begged, thinking that he had persuaded her. "Look, I have no right to ask you for anything, but I am desperate. Let me go and promise never to do this kind of thing again. I really mean it." She was silent, watching him closely. Then she said, "You are really afraid of going to prison, aren't you?" She came over to him, shaking her head. "I've always liked the wrong kind of people." So here in this paragraph, underline the word ornaments, means a thing used or serving to make something look more attractive, but usually having no practical purpose, especially a small object such as a figure in something. Amuse means finding something funny or entertaining. Hesitated means pause in indecision before saying or doing something. Frightened means make afraid someone. And persuaded means to induce someone to do something through reasoning or argument. So here then somebody from the doorway asked him in this paragraph that was it a cold or was it a hay fever? And Horace again sneezed. And the other person then continued and told him that he could cure it provided he knew which flower was the reason of the allergy, and that he should see a doctor if he wanted to be a good thief. Then the other person said that his sneezing could be heard from the top floor of the house. The voice was calm and firm. Then he got a bit nervous as he saw a woman standing in the doorway. The woman was a young, pretty, and dressed in a red color. She walked towards him and arranged decorations kept on the fireplace. Then she ordered the dog to stay away and said that people might be thinking that she was away for a month, but she was back in time and didn't expect a burglar to welcome her back at his house. Horace was a bit hopeful as he saw that the woman was amused rather than being panicked or seeing a burglar. He thought that if he treated her well and didn't do anything wrong, then she might let him go. He also told her amusingly that he also didn't expect to meet a family member either, as he had thought that there was no one at home. Then she said that she has realized what an inconvenience she was to him, and asked him that what would he do now. To which he replied that at first he wanted to run away. The woman replied that he could do so, but she would call the police and let them know that he was robbing her house and they would catch him. And Horace replied that he would obviously cut the telephone wires first and then he would do something to her so that she was not able to do anything for a few hours. She looked at him seriously and asked him that would he hurt her. Horace replied that he was just saying that to frighten her. She was not frightened by what he said, and Horace then told her that it would be better that she forgot that she ever saw him and let him go. Suddenly, she spoke in a sharp and loud voice that why should she let him go? He was there to rob her, and if she spared him, he would go and rob someone else. She said that the society needed to be protected from people like him. He smiled and said that he was not a threat to the society, and that he was not a he stole only from those people who had a lot of money. Also, he stole for a good reason, and he hated even the thought of going to a prison. She laughed at his reply, and he was begging her not to call the police. Horace was begging only because he thought that he had convinced her to let him go. He was desperately asking the woman not to go to the police and that he would surely stop robbing people. He promised her that and told her that he meant what he said. She then looked closely towards him and asked him that was he really afraid of going to the prison? She shook her head and said that she always liked the wrong kind of people. Actually, this was an indication for her that she was also a thief, but he did not pick the clue. She picked up a silver box from the table and took a cigarette from it. Horace, eager to please her and seeing that she might help him, took off his gloves and gave her his cigarette lighter. "You'll let me go?" He held the lighter towards her. "Yes, but only if you'll do something for me." "Anything you say." "Before we left for London, I promised my husband to take my jewels to our bank, but I left them here in the safe. I want to wear them to a party tonight, so I came down to get them, but Horace smiled. "You have forgotten the numbers to open the safe, haven't you?" "Yes," replied the young lady. "Just leave it to me and you'll have them within an hour. But I'll have to break your safe." "Don't worry about that. My husband won't be here for a month, and I'll have the safe mended by that time." And within an hour, Horace had opened the safe, given her the jewels, and gone happily away. For 2 days he kept his promise to the kind young lady. On the morning of the third day, however, he thought of the books he wanted, and he knew he would have to look for another safe, but he never got the chance to begin his plan. By noon, a policeman had arrested him for the jewel robbery at Shotover Grange. His fingerprints, for he had opened the safe without gloves, were all over the room, and no one believed him when he said that the wife of the owner of the house had asked him to open the safe for her. The wife herself, a grey-haired, sharp-tongued woman of 60, said that the story was nonsense. Horace is now the assistant librarian in the prison. He often thinks of the charming, clever young lady who was in the same profession as he was, and who tricked him. He gets very angry when anyone talks about honor among thieves. So, here what has happened. Please underline the word mended means to repair something which is broken or damaged. Charming means very pleasant or attractive. Profession, a paid occupation, especially one that involves prolonged training and a formal qualification. Sharp tongue means it's basically used for a person given to using cutting, harsh, or critical language. Honor means high respect or great esteem. So here what has happened, that the woman picked up a cigarette box made of silver and took out a cigarette. Horace thought that if he pleased her, then she might help him. So he quickly removed his gloves and gave her his cigarette lighter. Then he asked her that would she let him go, and pointed the lighter towards her cigarette. She replied that yes, she would let him go, but only if he would do something that she wanted. Horace quickly replied that he would do anything for her. The lady said that before going to London, she had promised her husband that she would put all the jewelry in the bank, but left it in the safe and at the Greenwich. She had to go to a party now, but had forgotten the code of the locker. Horace said that he would do it, but he would have to break the locker, to which she replied that he need not to worry about that, as her husband won't return in a month's time, and that she would get it repaired by then. Horace broke open the safe and within an hour and gave her the jewels and left happily, thinking that he was safe now. For 2 days he kept his promise and to the lady, that he won't steal, but on the third day he thought about the books that he wanted to buy and started thinking that he would have to look for another locker to steal from. He couldn't even get the time to plan the next robbery as he was arrested. A police officer came to his house and arrested him as his fingerprints were all over the shot over Greenwich. No one believed him when he said that the owner's wife had asked him to open the safe. The actual wife of the owner was an old woman who was 60 years old and was a sharp-tongued woman. And she said that the story was nonsense because she had never met Horace, not to think of asking him to break open the safe. This means that the young woman who had asked Horace to open the safe had pretended to be the owner's wife and was a thief. Then Horace became the assistant librarian at the jail and thought about the woman who, being from the same profession, tricked him and got him caught. He felt really angry when someone talked about honor among thieves. With this, I end this story. Hope you all have understood. Thank you.